The curious thing is that the same problems that prevent you as the end user or end developer of that something to have decent response times and availability and what's not, those are exactly the same things that actually complicate lives of those providers as well. They also depend on third parties.
This is DevOps Paradox, episode number 226, When Cloud Services Let Us Down. Welcome to DevOps Paradox. This is a podcast about random stuff in which we, Darren and Victor, pretend we know what we're talking about. Most of the time, we mask our ignorance by putting the word DevOps everywhere we can and mix it with random buzzwords like Kubernetes, serverless, CI/CD, team productivity, islands of happiness, and other fancy expressions that make us sound like we know what we're doing. Occasionally, we invite guests who do know something, but we do not do that often since they might make us look incompetent. The truth is out there, and there is no way we are going to find it. P.S. It's Darren reading this text and feeling embarrassed that Victor made me do it. Here are your hosts, Darren Pope and Victor Farsick. Victor, on a recent episode of our Friday show called Gee Go Figure DevOps Paradox Live, we talked about an article that said cloud dependencies need to stop effing us when they go down. That was June 2nd of 2023.
Or in other words, the way I interpret that title is you can be lazy and blame them for everything.
Well, great. That was a great show. Thanks for listening, everybody. That's the point, right? I mean, we'll get into some of the points here. Now, if you are architecting your application dependent on cloud services that people are paying you for, and you're not architecting it in a, how should I say, resilient way, you are doing your clients a disservice.
The issue I have with that article is that it goes on a ramp like, hey, 99.9 availability, that's for each service, and all those together do not represent 99.9, but it's much less. Of course it is, and that's a problem. And the problem when the issues happen, the cloud vendors do not fix them immediately, and they do not give you the information about what's going on immediately, and so on and so forth. And all those things, no exception, are 100% valid and correct, except that all those things would be happening without SaaS. So let's say that you don't use any service from anybody. And you have, you use 100 services from your internal self-managed system, right? Would any of those rules or issues not apply in that case as well? Right? Let's say that you have a team that manages storage. Storage goes down. Will you get the status of that storage being down immediately? Will somebody tell you what's wrong immediately? Will you even know right away? And so on and so forth. No.
So why should we expect the cloud providers to do more than that?
What I would say is that not always, but more often than not, actually availability and the response time and so on and so forth is higher externally than internally.
Most of the time.
Yes. They're not perfect. AWS goes down, right? I'm not saying that it doesn't. But I dare somebody to actually compare it and confirm that actually it goes down more often than your self-managed something.
The chances of you being able to operationalize better than the hyperscalers is infinitesimal.
Exactly.
I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's going to be a very, very small percentage that you're actually going to beat the hyperscalers.
Now, truth be told, not all SaaS, not hyperscalers in this case, are made equal, and not every single provider that you're using is going to have the same slow or quick response times and visibility and so on and so forth. So it's not all the same. The way how AWS does things is probably more reliable than a startup that just sprang into being a year ago. Yes. And especially if that startup gives you SaaS service for something that is on top of AWS, so you have double dependency over there, right? So I'm not saying that it's all brilliant. I just don't like how the articles sound like, hey, this is a problem of cloud, using cloud services or SaaS. I don't think it says explicitly there, but I have that feeling as if it says, oh, if only you wouldn't be using SaaS.
That's just silly. And again, the link for this article is going to be down in the episode description, so you can go make your own decisions on this. But again, I'm going to take it back to how you started it out. If you are architecting your application to be dependent on third-party services, and I'm defining third-party service as something that you do not have control over.
You as you personally.
Me.
Right?
Me
exactly.
as me,
so
I don't have control over.
From that perspective, let me see whether I interpret what you're saying correctly. Even services provided by other teams in your company, in this case, count as third party, right?
Absolutely, has to.
Yes. Then yes.
So if I can't come up with a reliability that I need for my application using the third parties, then it's on me to do the thing that needs to be done. The downside to that is I don't have unlimited budget, because that's where it's at that point. Because if I have to architect everything in that way and I can't use anybody else because I cannot trust them, I am not Mr. Musk with billions of dollars sitting around.
And even Mr. Musk, in that case, would have used third-party services from other Mr. Musks in his company, right? Still, if we define third party as it's not something I'm managing, then everybody depends on third party. Absolutely everybody.
Maybe I shouldn't use Mr. Musk as the example. Why don't we stick with Mr. Buffett instead, because we know his money's there. So we'll stick with Mr. Buffett. We're taking a look at this. People are complaining your app is down because you made a poor decision as an architect.
So let's say that we have 100 components in total, just for the sake of argument. And in this conversation, it completely does not matter whether it's cloud, hyperscaler, SaaS, or self-managed, whatever it is. Completely doesn't matter, right? You have 100 components you depend directly or indirectly on, right? And each of them has 99.9 availability guaranteed, right? Fair enough. It's not a high number even, right? Now, if crash of each, if that 0.1% when each one of them is down means that the whole system is down, then you will never reach more than 90% availability in total, right?
Right, because it's going to add up. You take those, if you have 5 services that are 3 nines, and I'm trying to do math live, which is a bad idea. But that's never going to be more than 3 nines.
Exactly. In a simplistic way, you can say that it's 99 point, if it's 5 services, 99.95 or 4 or whatever, then, right? Not 99.999.
Right. Well, even then, you couldn't even justify, well, okay, maybe math will get you to the extra 4th position there.
There we go.
But you can't trust it because you were only promised 3 nines. So you might luck out, but that should be your, I am so thankful this is working well today, not I expect this to always be there.
Exactly.
I think back 10, 11 years ago, I had this problem to deal with. How did I solve for it? Well, I needed to be able to be disconnected. So what did that mean? Caching. That meant distributed caching. It meant a lot of caching. But even that doesn't solve the problem.
Even if you don't have caching, it's about failing gracefully only for that specific part of it, right? Hey, if I cannot buy something in Amazon right now because their shopping cart service is down, that should not prevent me from browsing the catalog.
Well, let me give you a different example of that. In the States, there's a site, bhphoto.com. And I probably used these guys as an example before. They follow the Jewish Sabbath. So from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday, you can't buy. You can shop, you can put stuff in the cart, but you can't check out. So why not apply that if you've got a catalog type thing? Or, here's the other thing that's sort of silly too. If you've got a website and it's a news type website, that should always be available. Let me say that a little bit differently. If your website is just web pages, no interactivity, don't use an app server. Publish static files.
Exactly.
Or let me go even a little bit deeper and probably dig in a little bit more. If the end case is you're just serving up effectively static data and you're too lazy to just publish the things as static assets, fix that. Because usually when you have downtimes, it's because your app server is down. But if instead you're putting Cachefront out in front or any of the other CDNs out in front, just so you can keep running, forget it. Publish it. Treat it like a static website. Just publish everything. Then your downtime goes away. Now you'll have different problems to deal with because cache invalidations get probably more strange. But there's no reason why you can't solve for things.
Exactly. It all boils down to, that's what you just said is one example. There are many other examples. Sometimes it's cache, sometimes it's many, many different things, right? Can solve the problem. But the point is, blaming others cannot be the default response. I think that's the key.
Right. When you take a look at this article, again, the link is down in the episode description, it gets down towards the bottom, software makers deserve better. And this is one of the sections that sort of set me off. If the third-party services did not exist, I would be rolling it all the time. I'm happy to have something to use, even if they're not giving me everything that I want, because at least that much is saving me time.
I haven't been doing professional services in a while, but unless something drastically changed, even the big enterprises, massive ones, even they cannot actually have the concept of high availability by running their own data centers in equivalent to 3 zones, right? So you cannot even, vast majority, like significant majority, they cannot even contemplate the idea of having something remotely resembling the service that is right now offered. Cannot even think about it or plan it, right? Without actually going, even if you could, then the execution and stuff like that. Like, how many times did you go to a company and they say, I want HA, and you said, okay, how many data centers do you have? And how far away they are from each other so that we don't have latency issues?
It's been forever since I've asked that question.
Exactly.
Because most everybody went to public cloud thinking that was going to solve their problems. The problem with that thinking was the people that went to public cloud treated the public cloud like their data centers.
Exactly.
And that's another can of worms. I don't think we're going to get into that one today. We probably shouldn't because this would go on for a few hours. But I do want to call out a couple of the subpoints that was under the section software makers deserve better. But before I do that, do you know what you deserve even better? You deserve some Barbaro Mojo. There we go. If you're watching the video, there's the bottle. Barbaro Mojo is the sponsor of today's episode, and let me get into it right here. Are you ready to spice up your life while you optimize, I was going to say your DevOps infrastructure, but you're trying to optimize your application for no downtime without blaming other people. That's what you're trying to do. Meet Barbaro Mojo, the delicious Cuban hot sauce with a kick that's sponsoring today's episode. Barbaro Mojo brings the heat with their unique Cuban marinade, adding an unforgettable flavor to your favorite dishes. So with flavors like El Habanero, Halibo, Panazo, and Best Day Ever, there's a perfect match for everyone's taste buds. As a DevOps Paradox listener, you're entitled to an exclusive 25% discount on your first order. Just visit barbaromojo.com and use the promo code DevOps25, that's DevOps, the number 2 and the number 5, at checkout to claim your discount. Thanks to Barbaro Mojo for sponsoring today's episode.
I think that that sauce can actually solve the dilemma that we're discussing right now. So let's say that first, step number one, everybody back to the office working in the same building.
Oh, by the way, because we are recording this, what day we're recording this? August 7th. It's coming out on August 30th, so we're nearby. Usually we record a little bit more in advance. Did you see that Zoom is mandating return to office?
Good for everybody else who's hiring.
That's sort of the point, but isn't it funny that Zoom, something that's built for doing remote things, now they are offering a 2-day hybrid, so I'm not going to throw them under the bus too hard, right? It's fine. There's time for office, there's time not. But anyway, let's go back to the example that you were giving. Sorry, I had to sort of poke on that one.
Step number one, everybody goes back to the office, and offices must be in the same building. It's very important.
Yes. One building.
Exactly. With quick access to an elevator. Okay. Step number two is ditch all the SaaS and clouds and hyperscalers, everything managed in-house, on-prem, self-managed. Now, you still have those third-party dependencies, right? And something will go wrong. And somebody needs to fix it fast, extremely fast. Now, if you pour that sauce that you were mentioning into that somebody's coffee, in sufficient quantity. Huh?
Yeah, that would probably work.
There we go.
It's not only a sauce for your Italian, it's also a spice for your coffee.
Yeah, work fast type of stuff, or you get more.
I don't know that I would do that. I'm sorry. That might be the one place it doesn't work. I don't know. I don't drink coffee, so I don't know.
If you put sufficient quantity, I imagine somebody would start running around and fixing things immediately. That somebody wouldn't fall asleep.
Okay. But let's stay there for just a second. If you are in a building, a single floor, everything's on one floor because you can't trust the elevators. You've got your data center there. If you were to build this yourself, you'd have to have multiple power providers to your building.
Correct.
How many places are you going to get that? Right. That's where it fails immediately, right? But let's assume you could get power from multiple providers. Then you need multiple internet providers. That's not as hard.
Yeah.
In most metro areas.
Oh, wait. Not as hard. Multiple providers is one thing. Multiple providers with different cables.
Cabling, yes. Could be harder. Yes. Again, making the assumption we could get that.
Exactly.
I mean, how many dollar bills am I dropping right now? And Swiss francs and everything.
You will not exist already as a company. You're already on the verge of bankruptcy, but yeah, continue.
What would be the next step? I would need multiple generators, but they can't be side by side.
Hey, don't forget earthquakes. It needs to be a very, very wide building.
Well, it just can't be. It can't be on either of the coasts. So we stay away from hurricanes, earthquakes, all that stuff. So we're in the center of the country where they have massive snowstorms and tornadoes. Do you see the ridiculousness in everything that I'm saying right now? Yes, it would be great if the cloud providers could give us everything that is called out in this article. If they did, we'd be paying 20 to 30 to 50 times more than what we're paying right now.
No, to be honest, I think that I don't have necessarily a problem with things that they called out, because I do think that we, as a world, planet, should be improving all the time. And yes, I expect actually many of those things to be better next year or 5 years from now, right? They should be improving. So I'm completely for it. My beef is only that it sounds like it's only on providers. That's the beef I have.
Yeah. If you're architecting an application that people are paying you for, that's the key part there. Let's break those two things apart. If you're building an application that no one is paying you for, and you have no SLAs in place, go for it. Right? Doesn't matter. But if people are paying you money, you've published SLAs, and your SLAs you're publishing are 5 nines, but everything you built on top of, the best you're going to get is 97%. I would say again, I am not a lawyer. I would say you're in breach of contract, even before you launch.
You know, the curious thing is that the same problems that prevent you as the end user or end developer of that something to have decent response times and availability and what's not, those are exactly the same things that actually complicate lives of those providers as well. They also depend on third parties.
Okay, let's pull back the covers here. You've never worked at Amazon. I've never worked at Amazon. What do you think the one service at AWS is that everybody depends on?
Amazon.com?
No. It's AWS. So all the AWS... Oh, okay, well, yeah, fair enough. But think about it. Of all the AWS services, what is the one service in AWS that every one of the other ones depends on?
S3 or EC2?
The first two building blocks that existed back in 2007. You need compute and you need storage.
And networking. Those are the three.
And networking. I would rather make sure that those are up and running and they're happy with those. The more visibility I can get on that. But even again, if you were to break out just EC2 for a minute to keep it simple, I do not know where my instance is. I know it's in a region. I know it's within an availability zone. But that's all that I know.
I mean, you most likely wouldn't know if it's on-prem either, which exact server it is. If you do, then you're doing it terribly wrong. Let's put it that way.
If you can go hug your server, you're doing it wrong in 2023.
Exactly. I mean, since VMware came along and virtualization and stuff like that, we don't know where it is. Of course we don't. No matter where it's running.
Now, case in point with that is if you've got specialized hardware, okay, you might do that. Right? Well, I'll give you that. But for most general compute, you shouldn't know, you shouldn't care. If you're doing a home lab, that's where Proxmox comes in. Right? You should know where the servers are, but you shouldn't know where your VM is at any point in time. And shouldn't care. That's the key part, and should not care.
Exactly.
I want to go back here. The point under, I'm finally getting to it after all this, software makers deserve better. The bullets here are timely, detailed cloud dependency health metrics. No, I don't care. I need to know what my thing is. I don't need to know, going back to our example, if I'm using, I'll pick a service, AWS SageMaker, right, or pick any of the other services. I do not need the traceability of all the services underneath it.
Including hypervisors and physical servers, right?
And power, and generators, and network providers. It gets idiotic really fast. Now, I'm not saying that about the author, but I'm saying if you were to really just keep following the breadcrumbs, eventually you're going to end up at somebody's that is in a power distribution center, sitting in a truck waiting for the next thing to fall over.
You'll eventually end up at the bottom of the ocean there, where the cables
probably
got
where the shark are eating the cables.
Exactly.
Yeah. The other point here was service status specific to us and our use case. As a vendor, I'll be more than happy to do that for you. Pay me the money.
Yeah, I mean, come on. The first one, the previous one, I can even concede and say, okay, maybe a bit more visibility. Maybe I don't need to know about the specific server and hypervisor and stuff like that, but maybe I should know that this service EKS depends on this node pool, which depend on these nodes and this VPC, right? Which I actually do know, but I'm pretending as if I don't, right? By the way, you do though. At least, I mean, in Google Cloud, it would be harder to know because their services are more kind of compact, but in AWS you do. Anyways, I can understand the first point. The second, come on, no, absolutely not. I mean, yes, you can. If you're Netflix like type of business, then by the way, you probably already have a person dedicated. No, you have a team dedicated to you, assuming that Netflix runs in hyperscaler. I'm not following. I don't know where they run, but let's say that they do, right? When you're giving that amount of money, then you get personalized treatment. If you don't, well, you can. You just need to sign a bigger check.
Next point, a single place for all third-party service health information. So you have to go through different status pages, figuring all that out. Dude, that's a dashboard you need to build. You can't expect a third party to aggregate all the stuff that you're using.
From different third parties, right?
From different third parties. Yeah, so example, he was bringing up, he's talking about all this stuff. So I will read the sentence here. We deserve, I really don't like the word deserve. We deserve a real-time and complete view of every third-party service we depend on in a single place alongside our metrics, logs, and traces.
Here we go. That's the idea. That's a startup. Make it a business.
I believe that's what this gentleman's startup is. This is his startup.
Okay. We're getting somewhere.
Control over what, where, and how we get visibility. We deserve, he uses that phrase again, we deserve first-class Slack integrations, native Datadog plugins, PagerDuty integrations, webhooks, and more. Okay. So again, this leads to, which it all, and I won't read any more of those. It's interesting, though, the last big section is called Standing Up to Vendors. Our software is increasingly dependent on cloud vendors to function. True?
Absolutely.
That's good. We are in an interconnected world. Then here comes the next part. And vendors need to act like it. That's a problem. Why should they care? They are providing a service to me. Why should a vendor like AWS care about what's going on at Datadog?
Exactly. What you can do is say, okay, I'm sick with whatever X is doing. They're not doing it right. I'm going to go to Y. Yes, you can switch from AWS to Azure without me saying that one is better than the other, right? That's how businesses work.
And finally, in the last sentence, so we're left asking friends and strangers on social media. Okay, pause. If you're asking people on social media while you're having an outage, what's going on?
On Twitter, on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
I'm leaving it there. Is it me or is it them? How many times have you gone to Twitter or X, as the case may be at this point? How many times have you gone out there to find out if a service is down or not?
Probably zero.
Definitely zero?
I mean, maybe.
If something
I'm
is
known
down,
to have alcohol every once in a while, so I'm leaving the option of not remembering.
My point is, you're not going to go to social media to find out if something is down.
Of course I'm not.
If you know your services...
Netflix is down, then I might actually go and see whether somebody says on Twitter or whatever, is it my network provider?
Right. Okay, I'll give you that one. But using social media, using his phrasing here, our primary source of third-party visibility. Okay, this is the key part to this, though. Third-party visibility. Would I ever go to social media first for business? No. Again, this article is from Newstack. The person writing it is a vendor. Take it all with a grain of salt. My big beef with how he's setting it up, and again, very well written article, as much as I've been sort of banging on it. When I hear we deserve, that is such a... It's almost making me to the point to where I actually say the F word. Because, and if anybody knows me, knows that I don't say words like that. When I hear we deserved, that's being just a really insolent, entitled little child. What do we deserve? Well,
I deserve more money.
I'll give you a 100% raise. How does that work?
There you go. Thank you.
100% of 0 is 0.
Exactly.
Thank you. You're welcome.
200, no less.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. 200. I can do 200. That's no problem. If our thought process on all of this is we are entitled for something that we have not basically paid our lives for, I'm going to get a little heady here. You're wrong. I'm sorry. You're just wrong. There's nothing. We deserve worse. What do we deserve? We deserve to go back to the 50s where we had a green screen. Maybe a calculator. That's what we deserve.
It's a wrong article, but if that person, company behind that person, what's not, if that person can give any of those things, then I'm all for it. If I can get from yet another third party that is giving me 99.9 availability, personalized visibility in what's happening with all my providers, hey, I'm all for it. For the right price, of course.
Let me spin it a little bit differently. If you have this many third-party services that you're dependent on, did you ever architect your application? Is it possible that you may have just done a little too much when, going back to my earlier example, a static website would have been fine? Great article. I disagree with phrasing, but I am in alignment with the intent of the article. I will give it that. We deserve. No, we don't deserve. That's not it. How do we wrap this up, Victor? We are not. If you think you're entitled. See, okay, this is where we could go on for 30 minutes, me getting into words.
We're not going to enter into Gen Z discussion, right?
Would that be the Zs?
I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever is the young generation, right?
Well, the youngest is the alphas right now.
Oh, okay.
So the Zs are, I think the Zs are finishing up high school now. But anyway, no, you're not entitled to this. You do not deserve. You deserve to work. And this is the old guy shaking his hand at this guy. Do the work. Okay. Again, the link to that article and the name of the article, I'll scroll back up to the top. Cloud dependencies need to stop effing us when they go down. Link to that down in the episode description. Victor, anything else?
It's all good, I think.
Again, thanks to Barbaro Mojo for sponsoring today's episode. We hope this episode was helpful to you. If you want to discuss it or ask a question, please reach out to us. Our contact information and a link to the Slack workspace are at devopsparadox.com/contact. If you subscribe through Apple Podcast, be sure to leave us a review there. That helps other people discover this podcast. Go sign up right now at devopsparadox.com to receive an email whenever we drop the latest episode. Thank you for listening to DevOps Paradox.